what I like to do is start by doing market research, and it sounds fancier than it is. Really, you can just go in the store and see what's out there. Like, you
Hmm.
want to design blankets, like go to Home Goods and
What's
look at the
happening in the
blankets.
market? Yeah. I am so excited to be here today with Hollei Anne Hayes. Hollei is a surface and product designer who provides trend research, art and illustration, and unique style guides for companies through her creative studio, Hollei Anne Design Co. I am looking forward to learning more about her background and her take on the surface design industry. Hi, Hollei.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to learn more about your business.
Me
So,
too.
just to get started and kind of give an overview, can you tell us how you got into design art for products?
Yeah, so I've always been in the retail space. Throughout my 10 years of experience, I've worked with brands like Babies R Us, Skip Hop, and then Christmas tree shops, but I am formally trained as a graphic designer. So
Hmm.
half of my time spent was being a designer, and then the other half is when I discovered surface design. And that was actually when I got a job at Christmas tree shops and I worked directly across from the surface and product design team. And I was like, oh my God, that's what I've always dreamed of doing. So I've after that, I got a product development job at a company called Horizon Group USA. And then from there, I just completely fell in love. I was designing products for Target Bullseye Playground, and then Walmart also at the time was starting a dollar shop, and they are still bringing that to life. It is in some stores, but yeah, so that's how I fell into it. I've always had a passion for retail and products, and I've always had a passion for illustration. So it is the perfect blend for me.
Yeah, I love that. Well, there's so many people in this industry who have come from the graphic design space and kind of learned about it because they got some sort of extra work through their companies of, oh,
Mhm.
well, we need you to, often the company's only designer is a graphic designer. And while
Right.
what we do is a little bit different, sometimes if a company needs it, they're like, hello, you can do this, right?
Yeah.
And I know, there is a lot more illustration involved in
Mhm.
being, a surface designer. Like my sister is a traditional graphic designer, and anytime she needs illustrations, it's like go to Shutterstock because she doesn't illustrate. She
Yeah.
does layouts and things, but yeah, it's interesting how many
Yeah.
people love to
Throughout
make
my
that
des
jump.
but throughout my design career, I always like infused illustration even when I was in school. Like, I didn't illustration was a concentration, but I was like, I'm always going to do illustration, so let me study something else. And I've like ended up doing web design and graphic design, and I would illustrate a whole web page. So it was just always like part of me, and I just was excited to explore it more with surface design.
I love that. So you started, your surface design part of your career working really as a staff designer. What are some of those key lessons or skills that you took away from that career that helped you to build the business that you have today?
Yeah, so I have both, the experience. Most of my experience has been from being in a corporate setting. And then obviously I went independent, but I think having that corporate experience is so valuable. In graphic design, I was specifically in like brand design and advertising for companies. So, like, I learned so much about connecting consumer preferences with art and how to identify target audiences and everything that you may not actually think about that goes into building out, creative for a specific target audience. And then also, like, on the Horizon Group, when I worked at Horizon Group as a staff designer, just learning all the ins and outs of like what it actually takes to get into these really big retailers as far as like designing products and things like that. And then just down to general like how to send an email, how to have proper meeting
Communication.
etiquette,
Yeah.
and all of that. So I really feel like that has been really beneficial to me going independent. And I truly value everything I've learned from that experience. So, and I'm really glad I had both the graphic design and the surface design because I was able to, blend the two.
Yeah, I love that. Well, yeah, it's super valuable advice. I think there are so many, I also started my career working in-house, not in graphic design, specifically in textile design, but, I learned some of those same lessons. And I think it is a huge difference between people who have been, artistic all their lives and
Mhm.
suddenly sort of discover surface design online and maybe take some courses and then want to get into the world of surface design, or maybe they find spoon flower and they're like, oh cool, like repeating
Yeah.
patterns, versus somebody who's been through the job that it takes to work in-house. And that is something that's, I mean, that is a big portion of my education is kind of
Mhm.
bridging that gap, right? Because people don't understand that the industry is a lot different than, it sounds
Just
kind of
making
like
pretty
just draw
stuff.
something pretty and
Yeah.
it'll work out, but there's,
Yeah.
as you say, there is a lot of strategy to it. And one of the lessons that I've learned, which it sounds, we're kind of speaking the same language, is it's often not about the art or the quality of the art. It's about business of what decisions get made. So as you were saying, how looking at the consumer research and stuff like that, when our art gets chosen or gets rejected, it isn't, oh, she drew a wonky Santa and I don't like that Santa.
Yeah.
It's like, well, actually, we're moving more, or we're moving more towards this type of Santa, a more retro Santa rather than a more realistic Santa, or what,
Yeah,
all these
exactly.
different factors that really aren't about the quality of what we're doing. And
Mhm.
honestly, I think that that is a relief, should be a relief to
Yeah.
artists. It shouldn't be discouraging, like, I'll never know all those factors, so I can't make progress. It should be like, hey, I'm doing fine. It's not about,
Yeah, it's not a personal
you
attack.
know,
It's a business move.
exactly, exactly. I find it like, it makes me not take things personally when I get
Yeah,
like, I'm just like, yeah, okay, cool. Like, I
right.
honestly rarely get upset about, obviously there's times when you're just like, oh, come on. But,
You're like, "I
but I,
really wanted to see that on product."
yeah, but I rarely like, am like totally crushed by it because it is what it is.
Yeah,
Um,
and
so that's,
especially sorry, I just wanted to piggyback off of that, especially being in this Target Bullseye playground space, like it is a bunch of manufacturers bidding to be in that space. So you can present like 20 plus ideas and like one of them gets chosen. So it's all like in business and it could even come down to pricing and materials and things like that. So yeah,
yeah.
I've went through the ringer of all of the rejections, and I'm just happy when I see one of my designs follow through.
Yeah, for sure. No, I hear you. It's true. It's like, yeah, you just get used to the rejection and it's not, and you
Yeah,
just know it's not personal. Well, that's the thing. It's
right.
not, it doesn't speak to your experience or your abilities. It just speaks to, how they've decided to merchandise something.
Mhm.
So I love that. That's a important lesson to take with you. So how long ago did you kind of shift into the independent to be leave your corporate job and move into working for yourself?
Yeah, so I would say like a few years ago, so I was working at Horizon Group and the pandemic happened and my position was eliminated. And while I was looking for another job, I just continued to get freelance roles that were surface design related or product design related. And I just kind of took over into a full time salary. And, you know, it doesn't happen that easy. Like it's not like a miracle or anything like that. It's just I think that's the path that I was supposed to go in. And obviously, like being independent, it requires work to maintain those relationships and to gain new clients and things like that. But that's kind of how I started with being independent. And I am also a mama of a 2.5-year-old. So,
Mm,
you know, having that flexibility of being independent is really helpful for me. But I
yes.
just love working on a bunch of different things. And I think being independent really allows you to do that. So that's what is exciting for me.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So it wasn't, so that transition wasn't necessarily like, I'm thinking about going independent, I'm going to do it. It was just sort of a circumstance of your job was eliminated, but then when work kept coming in, it was like, well, what's the motivation to go back? Is that kind of true?
Yeah,
Is that true?
I guess, I mean, I did always have like an inkling that I wanted to do this on my own. And before, like when I had a full-time job, I was always working on my art licensing portfolio, building that up, mocking things up into a product for examples on my portfolio and just like honing my skills in that area. So I think I always like had an inkling that I did want to, I was just so scared. I was so
I
scared.
mean, that's fair.
And
It's
then
fair. It's a big leap and it makes, it is tricky to do.
yeah.
So wow.
And so I just had this fear, but then obviously like I just had to jump into it after, losing that position. I just jumped into it and then I learned as I went along, like all of the business side, because that's a whole other portion that you have to learn as far as like keeping your books and sending invoices and things like that. So um yeah, and I had some freelance while I was full time, but I it was really when I like didn't have any other option. I was like, this is what I'm gonna do. So
I mean, sometimes, yeah, when your hand is forced, it can be a good thing to kind of push you
yeah,
into
yeah, it
something.
was good for me.
And I love what you say about the flexibility. I mean, that is something that I value so, so much in my career. And this business, it goes up and down. It can be very frustrating, for sure. And but the flexibility, especially if you're a mom of a little one, my kids are getting a little bit older. They're 7 and 9 now. But I've
A
been
little.
they're still little, yeah, and they were much littler when I very first started. I didn't have kids, but be having that flexibility through my pregnancies, through the daycare runs, through all the pandemic, through everything, and being able to kind of put things on hold or do work after bedtime or whatever needed to be
Mhm.
done. That has been amazing and has made it worth it. When I look at money, like I came from a corporate job, I was making good money, a New York corporate job, I was making good
Mhm.
money. And then, my first year and even multiple years afterwards, I wasn't hitting that. I mean, I was making fine money, but it wasn't the same as my corporate job.
Right.
And it was like a bummer because I was like, I'm more experienced now and I know it takes time to
Yeah.
build, but I'm frustrated. But having that flexibility that was my like major benefit and that made a big difference. So I hear you there.
Yeah, I
Um,
100% agree and feel that.
it makes a big difference. So this is something that everyone wants to know. And people ask me this question, and I'm very curious of your answer too. What are some of the first steps you took finding? So you said you got freelance work, freelance work kind of came to you, which I want to hear more about that. But also, what are some of the steps you took to find paying client work as an independent artist?
Yeah, I want to be clear that it didn't just show up in my lap and I just
Just knocked on the door, like, hello, anyone in here?
I
Design.
wish. I wish. Um, I was seeking a full-time job. So other things were, other factors came in like, oh, you can't accept a full-time, but you could do freelance. So that's kind of how that happened. But as far as like when I was mentioning before, like I was in graphic design before, and I always like it was a little while before I could actually be a surface designer, but I was working on it. My husband got me like an iPad when we got married, and I would like practice on my iPad and like really try to figure out what my style is, what would be the easiest, like not the easiest, but like the best way to prep a file, because I had that background of being a designer. And, so I was working on like first honing my skills in illustration, and then working on building my portfolio, because you have to have like a portfolio of art to show. And that like I included like Christmas designs, which are really big, birthday and everyday designs. So I worked on that first. And then I started to pitch to people. And I was looking on job boards. Like I was saying, I was looking for full-time, pretty much anything at that point. And I was looking on job boards, like Facebook groups. And then I figured out how to cold email people. And I was like, oh, wow, this is exciting. So I did like some web sleuthing to find people's emails, to email potential companies that I wanted to work for. And then I just included like, hey, I'm Hollei. This is what I do. This is my experience, and included some of my work in that email. And I got hits from that and built from there. So it's a lot of
I
work.
teach it too. It works. It works. Yeah.
But it's a lot of work to do. But once you actually do it and you have like that portfolio, it's a lot easier to then pitch yourself. So, yeah, it's just time. Time is right. Like,
Yeah,
give
patience
yourself time.
is something that not my strongest suit, but it's the thing that I have to have and I have to work on, but I also have to encourage for all my students and people who watch my videos. It's like, this isn't an instantaneous thing. This isn't something that you can start a career in 6 months from starting from scratch.
Mhm.
You know, people who have had relatively quick upswings in their client work and things like that often have a background that you might not have. I mean, you specifically do have it, Hollei, but you know, people who are watching might not have. So there's a lot of factors that come into play. But when you're starting from, you know, even if you have great art, if you have 0 clients and connections, it takes 3 years, 2 to 3 years, 3 to 4 years to build a steady client base that needs you regularly, that you can earn money from regularly. The good news about our industry is that, you know, products come in cycles. And so, you know, you get a lot of repeat clients. If the work is good and the price is right and all that thing, all that, you know, you can get repeat clients because what you designed for them one year, they're going to need again the next year or the next season or the next whatever. So, you know, you have that opportunity for regular work. Whereas, for example, if you were like a logo designer, companies don't need a new logo every year.
Right.
You have to find different people who need logos or whatever,
Mhm.
you know, but for us, we do have cyclical clients, but you know, finding that base, it does take some time. So I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I empathize with people who have like beautiful art, but just, don't have other experience that maybe other artists have as far as like design. Like to me, whipping up an email, a cold email, and like, gathering the right size file images and things is easy for me because I've had experience in designing emails.
Mhm.
But I know it can be a challenge, especially if you like don't even know where to start. You're just like, I just love creating art and I want to
Yeah.
sell it.
Well, one place people can start is start your surface pattern business, which is my course. And you know, actually, I think Well, it might have just closed the enrollment by the time this video drops, it might have just closed, but it'll be back. Don't worry. I also have a pitch kit that gives you advice on emails and stuff. But yeah, no, having that experience, and once you do it, it gets easier and
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah.
So you are a multi-passionate designer. So beyond art for product, you also do brand identity for female entrepreneurs. You still bring in that graphic design experience. So my question is, how did you land on, those dual offerings, and how do you balance trying to attract two types of clientele? Because we've talked about, I mean, you have experience of like finding that customer avatar, like who's the person you're aiming
Mhm.
for, but you're aiming for kind of two different things. So how do you balance that?
Yeah. So I'm really passionate about helping women entre- entrepreneurs, and especially women who have product-based business, because obviously I come from retail and I come from a surface and product design background. So I know the business. And so having 10 years of design experience, half of that being design and then half of that being surface design, I'm really able to blend the two. And that's why I provide the branding. Like I mentioned before about, coming from coming from a corporate background where I was doing graphic design, but I was really focused on the brand, figuring out who the audience was, figuring out customer preferences, which really translates also to surface and product design. And so to me, in my mind, I'm like, these two kind of go hand in hand. And maybe that's just me because I have that experience, but I a lot of times what I offer for my clients who have their art in Target, Walmart, these big retailers, I offer them a style guide. So the style guide is really like a trend mood board. It has like some key icons, which would just be like spot illustrations, and then some key patterns, and then some typographic treatments. And this is something that I've seen a lot of my clients use. These are what the big retailers are using to build out programs and products easily and efficiently. So what I like to do is provide that for my clients. So that way their in-house product designers can use my art on their products easily. They can pull things that they need. So that's kind of like one portion, the style guide, which in my mind kind of translate, right? You have all these assets that you would use for a program that has a specific audience and customer. And that feels very similar to me, which is my formal background of branding and graphic design, where you're thinking about a company, you're thinking about the target audience, and then you're also thinking about all of these brand assets, which are very similar. I use backgrounds and illustrations to help tell the brand story as well as a logo. So that's how I combine the two. And that in my mind, they're very similar. So even though they're completely separate fields, because I have these two backgrounds, the process is very similar.
Right. I hear what you're saying. So you're, really connecting with that potential user or customer, or
Mhm,
whoever is going to have the product in the end.
mhm.
And this is something that is difficult for newer designers to grasp. As someone who designs art for product, I see a lot of new designers creating work that's not totally suitable for products that they hope to license for. So that's something, I want to ask you about. What advice do you have for designers who are looking to create work that resonates with their potential clients, whether it's art directors or even just like, I'm designing wallpaper, and yeah, you want to connect with the art director, but you also want to connect with someone who needs wallpaper in like want it to be wallpaper
Yeah.
appropriate. So what advice would you have for designers who are looking to kind of figure out how to bridge that gap?
Yeah, I think it's so hard because at the end of the day, we're all artists, right? And so like we really need to find that balance of creating art for yourself and then creating art with a customer in mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what what I like to do is start by doing market research, and it sounds fancier than it is. Really, you can just go in the store and see what's out there. Like, you
Mhm.
want to design blankets, like go to Home Goods and
What's
look at the
happening?
blankets.
Yes, I say this all the time. People are not doing it, or at least based on their designs. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
like
yes.
you got to see what is in market. Like,
Yeah.
you want to do a Halloween design, like see what's actually out there in the market. Look at everything. And it could be down to like the smallest section in a store, but like check out all of the stores. A lot of the stores I go to, TJ Maxx, Home Goods, wherever you see print and pattern, that's where you're going to look. And I think that's super important because then you can stack up your art and see if it's kind of aligning with the art that you're seeing in store, because the art you're seeing in store is the art that's being sold.
Yes, I agree. Couldn't
And
agree
then
less.
yeah, and then another thing that I like to do is like identify gaps. So like you're seeing this art in the store, but maybe there's something happening culturally that's going on. Like, can you add, like, I don't know, the disco ball and all of that was like super popular within the past 2 years. So like, is there a way that you can incorporate that into your art so you don't just have pumpkins, maybe you have disco pumpkins? So like incorporating and identifying what those gaps are, but obviously first you have to go in the store and see what's there. And
Yes.
then I would say too, pay attention to all of the details, like making sure if you are having any type of lettering, make sure it's legible and make sure things are um like not copyright. Like, I know sometimes there's a lot of illustrators who like drawing Disney characters and things like that, but obviously like that, those are copyright issues. So like you just have to pay attention to those things, because if you're presenting Disney artwork to a TJ Maxx art director, it's not going to
Not gonna
sell
work.
because it's a copyright issue. So it's just like things like that you just have to keep in mind. And also going back to like text and legibility, like make sure your language, like if you're a person who likes to use cuss words, or like that might be your brand, but it might not be sellable. So
Right. Yeah.
all of those
Yeah,
things
thinking
to
about
keep
the
in
mass
mind.
market, right? If you
Yeah,
want to make your own products and sell them on Etsy or sell
right.
them at like art fairs and stuff like that. I mean, I know lots of brands who make a lot of money with those like more salty language or more like edgy products. But when you're trying to sell in Target, you're not going to get that edgy. You're still
Yes.
getting mass market. So yeah, if you're trying to be with big brands, you do have to kind of like water things down a little bit if that's your personal
Yeah.
style. Yeah. So, and I love that. I think that's great advice. I mean, definitely great advice. Look at what's in the market. I tell people this all the time. But sometimes it's just not obvious that that's what you need to do. But I would want to remind people, as you were saying, we are artists. So sometimes it's tricky to you feel like you're being too commercial or whatever, and you want to do your own thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that you need to remember that basically a surface designer is a commercial artist, right?
Mhm.
So if you want to be a fine artist, or if you want to
Mhm.
do something like I just said, make your own products and have your own market where it's maybe more edgy or your own personal style, you can seek out. I mean, the internet is a wild world. You can seek out people and an audience who is interested in your specific,
Mhm.
very different, very non-commercial style
Yeah.
or whatever. You can find those people and you can sell to them. But again, if you're looking to sell to places like Target and TJ Maxx and these bigger brands, you need to think commercially. And so it's a choice. If you're feeling resistance around, this is too watered down, or this is not my style. My style isn't like what I'm seeing out on blankets and whatever. that's okay. But if you feel uncomfortable going towards a more mass market style, then maybe it's not surface design for you. Maybe, or
Mhm,
maybe again, it's making your own surface designs for your own products and then finding your own audience
mhm.
versus finding art directors who are already selling to a wide audience, right? So it's just making that choice.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I I 100% agree with that. And I think there's a lot of successful people who aren't commercially viable for a wide market, but they are still successful. So yeah.
Definitely. Definitely. Um, all right. And you also hit on something there that I want to dive a little bit deeper into, talking about looking at not only what's happening in stores, but what's happening in wider culturally. And that brings us to trends. I love trends. I
Mhm.
know that some designers really shy away from them because of sort of what we were talking about, of feeling like, oh, I'm going too commercial, or I'm just going along with whatever, and disco balls, what the heck, like whatever. Some people just don't connect. But what are your thoughts on leveraging market trends in your art? And how can new designers get an understanding of what's trending in the industry?
Yeah, so I think commercially, like we were just talking about, if you want to be commercially viable to these huge retailers, I think knowing the trends and incorporating them is very important. And I think you just need to figure out what trends make sense for you.
Yes.
Um, so me, I do like colorful, texture rich illustration. And I wouldn't necessarily dive if there was a trend around tarot cards, like those spooky tarot cards. Like, I'm not going to necessarily dive into that because that's not resonating with my style. And I don't think it would come across the right way, like me trying to tackle that, I don't think it's going to come across. So I think there's so many trends that you can focus on the ones that are right for you.
I
And then
agree.
as far as like finding trends, again, look in the store. If you're starting to see things multiple times, it's on trend. And then pay attention to pop culture, world events, things that are going on. Those are really going to inform you. Like Taylor Swift and Beyonce having like the hugest concerts of the year, like
Of
last year,
course. Yeah, exactly.
like those are totally influencing trends like the friendship bracelets and things like that. So really paying attention to that. And then as far as like actual resources that I use, I go to Trend Bible, WGSN, which they are known for trend research. And then you can also find some other deep dives, like Etsy has trend research based on what
Mhm.
people are searching on their platform, and then same for Pinterest. So
Yeah.
those are really great references that you can use for trend research. And then I actually um, outline my process for what I do for surface design and finding trends. And it's called Mood Board to Market. And it's just a mini course outlining my process and how I take trends and inspiration and turn it into surface design. And this process has gotten my artwork into stores like Target, Walmart, Hallmark, Michael's, Home Goods, and
Yes.
lots of other. But I actually taught this full course. It was an hour and a half to one of my corporate clients who works with Target recently. And this will just be a mini Spark Notes version for your guests.
That's awesome. So we will put link in the description for Mood Board to Market, the mini course version. Thank you so much, Holly. That's very generous
Yeah.
of you.
Yeah.
So definitely check that out, guys. I'm definitely going to sign up and check it out too. That sounds like fun. I've done a lot of mood boards and trend boards, so I'm guessing I think I'm okay at it, but you
Yeah.
never know when you can pick up some extra tips. So I love that. That's so much fun.
It's just always fun to see another designer's like perspective and the way they work. So
Yeah, and their process. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, I love that. And trends are a big part of my work, or, yeah, my work as well. I do think it's important. I want to piggyback off what you said. I do think it's so important if you're looking to get into some of the commercial market. Those trends, they come through, they are used every season. All these brands come up with their own trend boards based on their own research, and they want to have work that fits into those trends. And yes, some of them are slightly, they're all slightly different,
Mhm.
but you can kind of get ahead, even if you don't know what the brand's trends are that year, like for the coming year that they're looking for art for at this time. You can get ahead of it by doing some of your own trend research. So
Mhm.
I have some resources on trends on my website as well. So definitely search trends on my site, and you'll find some resources as well. So
Oh, and I just wanted to say that art directors, when they have a trend, they want to just make it slightly different for the next year and the next year until the trend goes
yes, I
away.
always say
So
this too.
yeah, so if
10% fresher. That's what I always say. They want it 10% fresher. That's
yeah,
all.
exactly. So if you saw a trend from this year, you can just slightly update it with like something else that you're seeing that's trending, and then bam, it's fresh and new. So
Or your take on it might just be the fresh take on it,
right.
right? Your
Yeah.
own interpretation of what you're seeing is going to be something that's new. They just want, it's, yeah, 10% fresher. I say that as well. It's so true. They're not moving on because, especially in these big brands, they're looking for things that are proven sellers. So if it
Mhm.
worked, really well last year, if it was a big seller last year, then they want to build on that momentum. And they, stores like Target and stores like Anthropologie, they're buying for lots and lots of, they're choosing the product for so many stores across the country and even across the world. And so they are spending a lot of money for
Mhm.
every item and all the artwork that they're using. So they need to be a little bit cautious
On the safe
and kind of
side.
hedge their bets on something that they've already seen work. So just keep that in mind. That's great advice as well. Um, well, I wanted to ask one more question before we wrap up, and that is, as an independent artist, I love how you're doing you found some success with cold pitching. I mean, it feels difficult, but it's the most direct way to get right into it. But
Mhm.
one thing that I really thought was interesting when I was looking through your website is that you kind of have this, to me, compared to some other artists, I mean, many artists I've seen, sort of a unique approach to how you offer your design services to clients. And so I wanted to know kind of how you came about that, maybe kind of explain, how maybe you applied your retail knowledge to the marketing of your own skill set. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. It's kind of like, where did a lot of surface designers license their work, or they might have an agent, or they just have like a library of art to purchase. But for my business, I have different services. So the services that I include, and they include art licensing, but my main services are surface design, which includes art licensing and then work for hire, product design, which is me actually designing the product, rendering product for manufacturing. And then I do my brand design for women entrepreneurs. But because I have such a vast experience of working with these corporate companies and kind of having the in on what's going on, that's why I provide that. So I have, under the surface design, I have style guides as well.
Hmm.
And this is what big retailers are using. Like you were saying, Elizabeth, about how they come up with their own trends. Like they have a team of product designers working on 50 plus products per program,
Hmm.
so they need to purchase art that, or create art that is going to make a cohesive product collection and also make it efficient for their team to pick and choose things that they need for an assortment of product.
Yeah.
So that's why I have style guides as part of my service, because that's what I provide to my clients. I provide, and this is what big retailers are using. So I provide a mood board. Sometimes they have a mood board and sometimes they don't. So I provide a mood board, a color palette that they could use throughout the product collection, these key icons, which are like spot illustrations, typographic treatments, and then patterns. And then that way the team can efficiently pick and choose what they need for different SKUs and different products. So that's kind of from my experience of being
Mhm.
in this world. That's why I'm providing these services, because these are the services my clients are already asking me for. And because they're asking me for these things because I've had experience doing them in-house.
Right.
So that's how I came about
Yeah.
with those
Yeah, it's sort of
services.
an expanded and very much more like retail focused collection,
Hmm.
right? So for people who may not quite understand, well, first of all, you can go to Hollei's website and see some examples, which I'll have the link in the description. But, oftentimes if we're thinking about for licensing or something, we might be designing a collection or a mini collection where it's 3 patterns or 2 patterns and an illustration that all kind of relate with style and theme. But Holly's just those style guides is sort of building that out a little bit further with
Hmm.
more items, but also more like, yeah, as you said, icons and like type that could work with it. Because as you're explaining, uh, if it's purchased by a company, they can then use that on a whole bunch of products. So when you go into a store and you see like into a Michael's and you see that whole wall of like late summer lemonade stand vibes or whatever they're selling, and it's like
Yeah,
all the things with lemons and lemonade and make
I
lemonade,
got
life is tough, make
yeah,
lemonade, and a gingham pattern that goes with it, and like whatever, all the things that just coordinate so perfectly and make a whole section of shelving. It's got so many different products. So having all those icons and those patterns and being able to mix and match make it easier. So Holly's just providing that. So I love that
yeah,
that you
yeah.
um
It's so, and I love doing it because, like I said, I have this background in figuring out target audience and consumer choices. So that really helps me to decide what kinds of illustrations should be incorporated, what kinds of, type statements should be said, and things like that. And
sentiment even, yeah.
yeah. So, and obviously I work closely with my clients and we collaborate on that, but it's kind of just making it easier for my clients because, sometimes you just need to design the product, which is a whole other a whole other job from surface
Mhm.
design and creating art. It's like creating things to scale and, designing 3D renderings and things like that. So it just helps them to have that style guide. So that way their product design team can just efficiently create the products. And of course, they're still using the art to create layouts and things like that, but it's just a lot easier on them. And I love providing it in that way because it's kind of like when I do a branding package, right? It's specific for an audience, for a program, and it has everything you need to create a cohesive collection.
Cool. Very cool. Um, well, it's been lovely learning more about you and your
Yeah, so
business. I think you've had a lot of really great insights about, coming from that marketing or coming from the in-house background and how these companies are working. So I know this is going to be a really valuable video for people watching. And I am going to put your links in the description. Guys, be sure to check out Holly's work, her website, and that mood board to market mini course that she is offering. So thank you again, Holly, for
thank you
joining.
so much, Elizabeth. It's been such a pleasure talking about our passion, basically.
Ready to level up your surface pattern design game? Dive into the ultimate resource hub for aspiring designers, the Surface Pattern Boss Toolkit. Unlock a treasure trove of freebies, including sales sheet templates, exclusive industry expert videos, and mini courses to grow your creative business. Don't miss out. Click the link in the description below to access your toolkit now and become a pattern design pro.